Hey everybody, I'm joined by Yuri Boyko today. He's the founder and CEO of Hope for Ukraine, which is a nonprofit that is deeply embedded in delivering humanitarian aid and medical support and rebuilding efforts across Ukraine's most battered regions. So thank you very much for being with us, Yuri. Tell us a little bit about yourself. You were born in Ukraine, right? You're currently in the States, but
Yes. Thanks for having me, first of all, Chuck. So I was born in Ukraine, and I lived there until I was 16 years old. Uh, I'm coming from the family of a minister who used to be in prison during the communism when I was 6 for being, a minister. And kind of my whole resistance against Soviet Union and that times that's what pushing me every day to do what I do, right? So basically, in 2016 I started Hope for Ukraine, right? And it was a response to initial annexation of Crimea and Donbass region. At that time, we already start building relationships with local community leaders and local NGOs, helping those people who were already internally displaced at that time, and nobody knew that 2022 will come.
But I think a lot of people don't realize that there was low-grade conflict happening every day, every week, every month in eastern Ukraine from 2014 till 2022, like that interim time period. I have a friend who's a medic, and he actually worked over there with an NGO doing medical treatment of the wounded. And so Russia was not being friendly even much earlier than 2022. Every one of these old Soviet-era apartment blocks was built with a bomb shelter in the basement. And that was actually to protect them from American nuclear bombs that might have fallen during the Cold War. And now they're being repurposed for something else. These people are used to being under the threat of violence from the Russian separatists just 5 kilometers from here across the line. And so now they know where they have to go if the bombs start falling.
Yeah, and when you look at the history, a friend of mine always says that history is a science. So basically, as soon as Ukraine got independence in 1991, Russian government always were trying to bring Ukraine back into the sphere of influence. First 10 years before, they were not so aggressive, but even starting from 2000s, they always trying to have puppet government in Ukraine, right? And that's what led to 2014 when Yanukovych fled the country, and then Russians came in through hybrid warfare, and they took over the Crimea and Donbass region. So we already, so a bunch of people who lived in those areas, they fled. Most of them end up in the western Ukraine, where we're based out of in Lviv. That's how we start helping them. And then, 2022 came at the full-scale war, and our response on the ground 20x ever since, as far as the areas we operate, the amount of people we help, and just the problems we're trying to solve. So, as this war drags on, I think the damage to regular citizens and overall infrastructure in Ukraine is getting worse and worse with each day.
Sure. You guys work in the frontline regions now. So when you look at Kherson, Donetsk, Kharkiv, Zaporizhia, which sector is under the greatest stress right now in terms of logistics and medical and energy, that sort of thing?
I mean, they're all bad, but if you look at Kherson region, right, just even last year, our volunteers, we could drive into Kherson without a lot of issues. Right now, to deliver aid to Kherson, you need to have like entire logistical meeting to make sure that you don't get hit by drones or you don't get blown up by mines. So right now, when our teams go in there, they usually stop about 10 kilometers, 20 kilometers before they enter that zone. They get someone who's local, we call them fixers, right? Someone who knows their way around, and usually everybody shuts off their cell phones because you cannot have no cell signal in those type of areas. And the drivers that we have, they go full speed. You usually have someone on a lookout, if it's a minivan, looking through the window to see if there's any drones flying. Because these guys, they have no weapons. It's a humanitarian groups, and you're trying to. Usually, we have about 2 to 3 windows to get in there and to get out before you, before you catch something. So that's the type of situation we see in these hardest hit areas, and we see similar stuff now in Sumy region, especially when they this winter offensive and summer, whatever, it's been offensive for a long time. When they start to try to capture the Sumy region from the north, we see a lot of that happening as well. So right now, they've been hitting a lot of the energy infrastructure there. So we've been deploying a lot of our solar energy resilience kits specifically to Sumy region, because there's entire cities without electricity for 3, 4, 5 days.
And I think people don't really understand also that there are still a lot of civilians in these areas. Even though it's a middle of a war zone, they're under fire. There are so many people in the villages in Ukraine who wouldn't have the first idea how to leave because they've never left in their entire life. They've probably never traveled more than 25 miles from their home where they were born, and they don't have a passport, they don't have any money, and they don't know anybody anywhere else, and so they just stay because they have no idea how to get out or where to go or what to do or how they'd pay for it. And so then when it does get that difficult, we have the Russians actually bragging about the fact that they have hunter-killer teams flying drones over civilian areas looking for civilians to kill, not even looking for military targets, looking for any targets.
Yeah.
A guy on a bicycle, anything, and that old lady, whatever, out in her garden. And they're just killing people just to kill people. People don't understand how brutal that is. So you're talking about these resilience kits. What else is in the resilience kits that you give out?
So our main program is feeding program, right? So we supply these food kits, about 1,700 of them each week. And then, so we've been delivering that ever since the full-scale war, but a lot of places we would go, people would have nothing to prepare that food with. And some places they would use firewood, right? Which is very dangerous because, if you burn the wood and the enemy sees the smoke, they might think this is Ukrainian military and they're going to send the drone in your window instead of you having the meal. You're going to get a drone for dinner, right? Mm-hmm. And then, so that's in the beginning of this year, we launched this program, Solar Resilience Kits, where together with the food kit, we would supply solar power generator and the electric cooktop. So basically, that the food and food that we deliver to them, these people, specifically the ones who live in high-rise buildings, that have a way to prepare food for themselves, charge their cell phones, kids, some of them, if they still have access to remote education, can do some of the homework on the laptops and stuff like that. So that's the part. So basically, there's a food kit that sustains family for up to 10 days. And then you have the solar power generator and the cooktop that comes with that. So that's basically what we've been really pushing right now to the frontline areas.
So what's the biggest bottleneck you find in trying to get aid into occupied or, recently liberated areas of Ukraine?
I mean, safety. First of all, for us, safety is the number one priority because these guys are volunteers. And we really take the safety very serious. So right now, the planning of each trip takes much longer than before, right? But so what that means is these people in those areas don't have access to necessities the way they used to, right? Like before, we could do like a deliveries, for example, in a village every week, right? Now, because of logistics and planning, it might take 2 weeks, right? So basically, and people need to understand, in those areas, there is no stores, there is no delivery like in supermarkets. There is nothing. If you don't have a garden, you can grow something. Things that's the only source you can eat from, or if we deliver something to you, right? Like groups like ours. So that's why as far as humanitarian impact, I mean, people, regular civilians, and most of them are elderly. They basically have to go much longer with less now because of the struggle of groups like ours to deliver them necessary supplies.
So how do you see this war ending up? I mean, do you think it might come to a negotiated settlement like they just saw in Israel, or do you think they're going to have to actually cause the Russian government to collapse for under the weight of its own evil, maybe, before this is actually going to stop?
I mean, the Gaza peace agreement it's not possible in Ukraine in that type of scenario, because you're talking about in Gaza you had Israel and you had Hamas, right? And both of those parties, they were dependent on outside support, right? Basically outsiders, whether it's United States, on Hamas side, whoever supports them as well. On Arab side, they had a lot of influence, right? As far as like what they're supposed to do, what they're not supposed to do. So you can put pressure much quicker and much stronger on these parties to agree to peace treaty. Here you have two sovereign nations, right? And basically, they fighting for the Ukraine is fighting for their existence because, Putin feels like Ukraine has to be one nation, and that's what he keeps repeating, right? So right now, as far as the end of this is definitely the collapse of the economy. That's what will bring the Russian economy. I mean, will bring this. I don't think extra, Tomahawk missiles or this and that. It might help a little bit, but it's not gonna end this war. In order to get lasting peace in Ukraine, Russians have to run out of money to pay, because you gotta understand, they have, over 1 million soldiers on Ukrainian, and all these people, they are mercenaries. They all get salaries, right? So Russia, they need a lot of money to pay these bills, and the only way to stop this. So I keep saying that the best weapon right now is to really close all the windows, all the doors for Russia to have any type of revenue from their oil sales. Once that happens, you'll see this war end in the next 6 months. And if it's not going to happen, this is going to last for a long time.
Yeah, I agree. You were back in Ukraine this summer. What was it like in Kyiv? When I was there were air raids going on every day, but, maybe 1 or 2 missiles or drones coming in. Now it's like dozens coming in. What was it like when you were there?
Listen, I keep saying to everyone that Kyiv right now is probably the most dangerous place on earth. Because, when you have 500, 600, 800 drones targeting, if not every night, every second night, or even once a week, this is just, and sirens is almost nonstop there, right? So basically, a way of life, and right now, if you look, they have constant blackouts. People have to pull out all their generators, even if you live in a high-rise, and it's all high-rise buildings, right? You have to bring your So the situation there is really, really, really bad as far as the way for the citizens to survive, and but you still have to command their resilience. when I think about it, and if you look through the history, usually the countries that been in war for such a long time, they will start collapsing from within. The people would start get tired. There would be uprising against their own government and stuff like that. But Ukrainians been in this for 3+ years, and you still have them in Kyiv. They can be 5-hour air raids, or some air raids like 8 hours long, and in the morning you still have people get up and go to work. Nobody calling sick, nobody's staying home, and sometimes, like right now especially, the metro stations there are so overcrowded that because some metro stations, they lose power, so people have to shift to another ones. So you have people who would spend 3 hours to get to work, right, and then 3 hours to get back. Then you go to bed and you have to wake up to run to the bomb shelter. So this is extreme stress that people live on. So as far as that's what inspires me, is the spirit of these people, that they keep on standing and they keep on trying to pretend they live a normal life. That's
what I've noticed when I was there too, is that the Ukrainians are amazing how they just keep going about their business, even in the midst of this incredible war. Well, Yuri, thank you very much for the work that you're doing for your country. You're a great patriot for Ukraine, and I've got a very soft place in my heart for Ukrainians as well, having spent so much time there reporting on this conflict. And so let's pray that there won't be a need for your NGO for much longer. But as it stands right now, if people want to support you, how can they find you?
They can go to our website, hfu.org. hfu.org stands for Hope for Ukraine. You can find us all social media, Hope for Ukraine. So we update every 2 hours, almost in real time. I tell everyone, if you want to know what we do, just follow us on our socials, and then you'll know exactly where we work, what we do, and you get an idea of how we operate. That's
great. All right. Well, thank you very much for coming on with us, and we'll have you on again sometime.
Thank you. Thank you, Chuck, so much. Thank you.